Right, in this video, we're going to explore the schema that has people trapped in the kind of anxiety that leads to those hypervigilant behaviors, constantly waiting for the next bad thing to happen. In response to this schema, we can be paralyzed by fear, we can become experientially avoidant and have periods of dissociation, even excessive amounts of anger. In my opinion, this schema is at the center of that common diagnosis we know as generalized anxiety disorder. So today, let's talk about the schema of vulnerability. When the schema of vulnerability is activated within our personality system, the primary feeling that we're left with is an underlying sense of fear and anxiety. Sooner or later, it is absolutely inevitable that something bad is going to happen. This can often be most active when things are going really well, noticing that this won't last forever, then searching around for the bad things in our lives just to prove that this theory is right. Basically, our thoughts revolve around a rigid belief that a catastrophe is about to strike, and we sit in the general sense of anxiety and fear that when this bad thing happens, we lack the ability and the resources to deal with it. As a result, we spend our days sitting in a fear-based system, usually in some kind of hypervigilance, scrambling around, trying to prepare for the impending doom. These beliefs can cause us to both exaggerate the risk of danger in our environment and minimize our ability to be able to cope with things. What we personally fear depends upon the content of our own unique experiences with feeling this sense of vulnerability, but it generally revolves around the following things. The thing to understand about this particular schema is that it revolves around the unmet childhood need for safety in the family environment, and it's strongly linked to a childhood experience of chaos and unpredictability. The schema of vulnerability is one that's often misunderstood and yet regularly experienced in ways that most people are not aware of. As I previously mentioned, the dominant stories associated with this particular schema leaves our system filled with fear and anxiety at the relative certainty that something bad is about to happen at any given moment, and a rigid belief that we lack the skills and the resources to deal with whatever it is that comes our way. As I previously mentioned, the dominant stories associated with this particular schema leave our system filled with fear and anxiety at the relative certainty that something bad is about to happen at any given moment, and a rigid belief that we lack the skills and the resources to be able to deal with it. At certain times in my life, this was definitely true for me, as I often found myself expecting the worst possible outcome and then sitting in the anxiety of hypervigilance associated with this expectation. Inside of my mind, I would connect the dots to this catastrophic ending, exaggerating the possibilities of risk and danger, while at the same time minimizing my ability to cope with the emotions that would get triggered if the situation did indeed play out the way that I was expecting it to. As we said before, for many people, the fear of catastrophe revolves around 4 different categories of vulnerability, and it's often the case that we experience more than one of these categories depending on our previous life experiences. Fear of losing our health and well-being, the possibility of danger or falling into a state of poverty, and losing control of our mind or our situation are where all of our fear exists. If we believe that our health and well-being is a vulnerability, we may have been labeled as a hypochondriac because we're constantly worried about the state of our health, despite the fact that doctors tell us all the time that there's nothing seriously wrong with us. The vulnerability to danger leaves us exaggerating concern for our own personal safety and the safety of those that we love. It has us viewing the world as being fraught with danger with every twist and turn. Poverty is a vulnerability that's sometimes labelled as the so-called depression mentality, which was named for people who were children during the Great Depression. People who struggle with this vulnerability are always worried about money, sometimes unrealistically afraid that they're going to go broke and end up on the street. While the fear of losing control revolves around the belief that we're losing our mind or going crazy, and it often results in the manifestation of anxiety and panic attacks. Working with this schema starts with the ability to create a sense of internal safety, which is actually one of the hardest things for us to do because safety can be a representation of danger. Breathing is key, as with all of our fears, so developing our ability to notice the distress that comes into our system and use the DBT stop and tip skills to basically slow things down and deactivate our fight or flight system is where all the change begins. At the bottom of the website page that's connected to this video, you're going to find a worksheet that's designed to help you figure out if the schema of vulnerability is one that's dominant for you. If you can, download the PDF and work through the questions. Take your time to think things through. Remember, we can find a little bit of every single schema within our own personal stories. What we're actually trying to find are the dominant ones that take us into that emotional place that we're desperately trying to escape from. If you've got an opinion on this or anything else to do with the integration of DBT and schema therapy, please leave a comment in the chat. I'd really like to hear your point of view. If you want to know more, come join the live online meetings that I facilitate each week on Zoom. I'll leave some links to those groups in the description below. And as always, if you like the content of this video, please subscribe to the channel, smash that like button, and turn on those notifications to get all the latest from me and the Liberation Place. I hope this video gave you some ideas on how the schema of vulnerability might be relevant for you and your own personality system. Thanks for watching. See you again soon. Take care, be safe, and be well.